Today, we're going to be continuing the Grand Prix series in the Sicilian. That is the closed Sicilian, knight c3, again, playing for f4. The open Sicilian, knight f3, plays for d4. 10,000 hours to master versus 10 hours to master. You do the math. So, I figured today we're going to start with e6. I'm going to split it up into them going a6 before we commit our bishop to b5, d6, not allowing us to double their pawns, so they would take with the bishop, e6, which I view as the most common, and g6, which can transpose into any of the former ones. And before beginning today, I watched my video yesterday because, got to relay it back. If I don't like it, then why would I put it out? And I realized I say a lot. So today, if I say more than once, shit on me in the comments because it's kind of gross. Filler words. Okay, that was once, so more than once. If I say it one more time, filler words are so annoying. Most people say like or a lot, and it's just very bad communication skills. Like I am reading Dostoevsky, and he's this very intelligent writer that's very hard to understand. And it's crazy how elegant they spoke back then. Like nowadays, I feel like we regressed. We use like 10 words a day. They used to use the way they speak is just very, I look up to it. He's most famous, or my favorite quote is, above all, don't lie to yourself. And everybody lies to themselves. Like, I'm going to study chess today. You say it, you don't do it. I'm going to go to the gym today. You say it, you don't do it. Like, what is a person if they are not their word? But anyways, this is a chess video, so we're going to continue. I recommend knight f3 to start with knight f3. You can start with bishop b5. Some people like it better, but there's something called a freak attack. That's why I like knight f3 better, but we'll get into it. Now I'm going to say they go d5 because typically they like expanding in the center like this, and then we get into our bishop b5 Grand Prix ideas. The point is to double the pawns so that we can rotate our queen over to the king side and attack them in the middle game, that is. And so here they have a few options. Option number one is d takes e4. And many people just assume you're going to take with the knight, they're going to go bishop d7 and not allow the pawns to get doubled. However, this is a check. So you get the doubled pawns, you get this really bad structure, and then you take the pawn and you have a centralized knight. What I would focus on in this position is keeping these pawns stagnated, keeping them frozen. Because the longer they are frozen, the worse their light squared bishop is. And, if you're cocky, you might call these future connected passed pawns. But if you're realistic, these are just double isolated pawns. So, structurally, black is not doing too hot right now. Now I'm going to say they go knight f6, and here you could go d3, but I know many people don't like trading off into an endgame. And here specifically, queen e2 is going to be a move. Sometimes it's going to be a move to go knight d1. Sometimes it's going to be a move to pin the pawn to the king. Other times it's going to be a move so that you're telling them, if you take, I take. My queen is well centralized. I cannot get kicked out by a knight. The queen is very, very good there. Now, bishop e7, they should not take, and then d3. When you could take with the pawn, probably would take with the pawn, though you could take either. Depends on your taste. Whatever you do you. Okay, now castle, and we get into second important phase of the thing. So I remember when I started playing the closed Sicilian Grand Prix, it was okay. And then I remember reviewing my games and my mistakes, and I saw that the engine loved b3. So then I started playing b3, and I started scoring way better in my games. Now, what's difficult to understand about this move is that it is less so about fianchettoing. So maybe 7 out of 10 times you will fianchetto the dark squared bishop and get this good diagonal aimed in at the king. Why not? Why wouldn't you? Though in other lines it's going to be blockaded, and b3 is still the best move. So let's talk about abstractly, why is b3 the best move? Well, again, it's all about freezing their doubled pawns on the c-file. So the longer they can't go c4, the longer they're stagnated, the easier the flow of the position it is for white to play, in my opinion. So b3 is more about stagnating their c-file pawns than it is just, oh, that was 2 times. Shit on me in the comments. So bishop e2, Don't commit your bishop there. Sometimes bishop a3, if you remove the, also editing, screw editing, if I don't, and now I'm saying it again, if I don't make good content, don't watch. Filler words. I'm going to get better at this. In a year from now, I'm not even going to stutter. I'm not even going to say the same word twice. I'm going to be a beast. Progress. Bishop b2. Don't commit your bishop here all the time. Be open to differences of ideas going here. The bishop can be very good on any of these diagonals. I inputted knight takes e4. Here, taking with the queen is good because you do hit a weakness. They go bishop f6, hitting your rook. I like the knight to e5. This is just one way of playing. So knight e5 is going to be a common idea. b3 is going to be a common idea. And bad pawns are going to be a common theme. And then you can follow up with bishop b2. Castles. Oh, one thing is, do not castle and fall for this fork. If somehow they remove your knight on f3 and get this fork, I'm not saying it's ever been done to me, but maybe it has, and you lose a piece. So don't forget that fork exists. Always make sure you have that covered. Bishop b2 would numb that. So I'd say this is line 1. Now we're going to move on to line 2. And there's going to be maybe 8 to 10 lines in here. Not sure. But I do want to format it well. Like, this is going to be c5, e6, just so you know what's going on. Because I'm very scatterbrained, so try to make things organized. Now, here's an appeal to some people to go bishop b5 first. So let's look at it here. Typically, it transposes 9 times out of 10, so it doesn't really matter. See? Similar position. But now we're looking at knight e7. And the point is, they're like, hey, I'm not going to get my pawns doubled. And you're like, okay, well, queen e2. Queen e2. This is an idea where the pin is going to be prominent. And also, if d4, if they expand, now you open up the d1 square. Later on, knight f2, d3, g4, be a maniac on the king side. Checkmate them. So knight d1 is a good square for the knight to retreat to if they opt to expand. Bishop d7, a sensible move, also a blunder. Why is it a blunder? Well, e takes d5. If knight takes d5, knight takes d5. E takes d5, you pause the clock, you win the game because they made an illegal move. So e takes d5, knight takes d5, and you are up a clean pawn, a very good clean pawn. I continued with a6, removing it. You don't damage their pawn structure. You're up on, look at those. Definitely get a bishop on this diagonal. Definitely castle. White is better than chillin', I would say. Okay, last move, a6. I would call it in inaccuracy, though they have a couple cool lines to get out of it. So bishop takes c6. If they take with the pawn, it's very similar to the other lines we looked at. You just go d3. They have doubled pawns like d3, castles, b3, bishop b2, queen e1, queen on this diagonal, g4, g5, set it again. Oops. We'll get there. a6, bishop takes, and knight takes. Now, e takes d5, they can't take with the queen, they can't take with the pawn, they are pinned. It's crazy to be aware of how much you say things now. Now I'm like, I consider myself like a semi-decent speaker, and so many filler words, it's gross. Horrible. Knight b4, they aim at c2, they aim at d5. The correct way to deal with this is to go d3. And see, I call it a semi-inaccuracy, but they make it out alive. They make it out alive and well. Kind of have an asymmetrical structure. They have a c pawn, you have an f pawn. They have an e pawn, you have a d pawn. Play some chess. Again, castles, b3. Don't fall for the fork, even though you have a knight here. Just we're talking ideas. b3, idea. Now, if they go knight d4, this would be the worst of the two options. I recommend going queen e4. You could also go queen d3, but the reason I like queen e4 is if they're ever to go f5 and kick you to d3, they compromise your pawn structure. So that is good for white. That's why I like queen e4 first. And otherwise, pretty equal game. Say they release the tension, you're already miles better. E takes d5. You could take on d5. That is a free pawn. You could also castle and bully their king. Both are fun. So this, I would say, would be part of line 2. I inputted a lot. As I said, I'm a spaz. So messy studies. I apologize to my students for that. I try to be organized. I'm getting better. So now we're going to go over if knight f3 first, d5. I just tried to show both move orders to show how it is similar. Here, if they expand with d4, you can actually go anywhere, but I recommend knight b1 is the best. Why is knight b1 the best? Well, when they go d4, which square do they weaken? They weaken c4. So since they weaken c4, you want to go d3, knight d2, and claim that in the middle game. Don't get your bishop trap, double their pawns when you could, which is why actually you don't go knight b1 first. My apologies. You go bishop takes c6, and then you go knight b1. And d3, stop c4. See, commonalities in themes. Themes are important. And then you're going to just continue normally. Meet a flank pawn up 2 with a flank pawn up 2, so they can't compromise your structure. I inputted some move here just so you could see how a middle game could go. Queen c7. Another commonality, if they go queen c7, they want to win f4. Don't obstruct the view of your bishop to f4. So go knight c4. If they take this, take with the b pawn, so you stabilize your center, and then it's going to become a battle on the b file. I put in rook f to d8. Here, just play some chess. The common ideas are going to be queen e1 and knight f e5. So if they move this knight, then you can expand here. And if they don't move the knight, then you can expand here. So that's why I like moving the knight first, because it gives them more opportunities to make a mistake. And that is good for the opponent. That would be you. So this would be line 2, right? Not too bad. Now line 3. So same thing. I put in knight f3. I'm biased. I like this a lot. Once we get to the 5th line, you'll understand why, or I'll show you why. Bishop b5, knight f6. Okay. Be very careful pushing the e-pawn. If their knight is on g8, it's almost never the best move, because once you go e5, you can never go f5. And sometimes in the middle game, you're built to go f5. So pawns are very good when they're next to each other, because they cover all the squares. The second you push, you create a hole. So for example, if you went e5, now they have knight e7, and they have an outpost for no reason that you gave them. So if anything, when you do gain a tempo and their knight is on f6, then it makes sense to go pawn to e5, because you kick the knight back. Then you double the pawns, and now do not go d4, because then you undouble the pawns. Why would you undouble the pawns? Structural weaknesses, you want to maintain them. They are long-term weaknesses unless you make them a short-term weakness in undoubling them. So d3, undercommitting, stopping c4 or slowing down c4. Again, b3, stopping or slowing down c4. And if f6, I just wanted to show f6, not a great move. What do you think you would do here? So don't take and destabilize everything. There first to claim the center, you'd have a weak pawn on f4. So go queen e1. And now everything is all fine, and you're continuing with just your attacking prospects. So a fun position for white to play. If they go bishop a6, understand that they are trying to play c4, not the end of the world. If they play c4, you can always continue with queen e1. Reason being is after you take with the b pawn, they have to take back, and then you go pawn to d4. And you're stagnating their pawns, which is good for you. They might try to undouble their pawns with c5. You say no, not undoubling them. See, these are gross, and they're going to be gross for the rest of the game. I love the Grand Prix when they get doubled c-pawns, which is at least half the time. For some reason, I don't know why black plays these lines. They are the most common. Ironic. Okay, a6. Now we get into the fun stuff. a6 stops bishop b5. So it stops this whole removing the queenside knight, yada, 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 which is why some people like bishop b5 first. But let me pitch this to you. If you like the move g4, then play knight f3 first. And you might be like, what are you doing? We call this the freak attack. The freak attack is actually very good. This Serbian grandmaster, Ivan Ivanisevic, I played him when I was a kid. he has a famous game where he beat another GM with it. I can actually make a video on that game. See, that's the other good thing about chess. It's just an endless game. Like, there's always more to learn. There's always more to make content on. It just never gets boring. You're always bad at something and you can always improve at something. And there's infinite amount of games. It's beautiful. It's also gross, but that's chess. So G4, freak attack, crashing a bunch of pawns. Let me show you. The point is it really stopped knight f6, because if they go knight f6, you go g5, and where's their knight going to go? Like, is it really going to go to h5 and you go d3 and this knight is just trapped? And look at this pawn structure. So people get scared to push their f and g pawns because they're like, oh, I'm going to get checkmated. But that's only if you see ghosts. You know, typically people, they make attacks that realistically aren't attacks, but then their opponents respond to it, and in responding to it, they weaken their position, they create holes, and then it's a serious attack, and then they lose, and they're like, I knew I was getting attacked, but you weren't getting attacked. You thought you were getting attacked, and then you got attacked because you thought you were getting attacked. Crazy stuff. So, knight f6, g5. What else could they do? They could do anything under the sun. I can make a separate video on this, to be honest. I will make a separate video on this. But if you like the looks of g4, go knight f3 first. Again, 9 times out of 10, this isn't going to happen. I get it like 1 in 10 games, so don't really worry about the nuances there. Now, last thing I want to review is if they go queen c7. Do not be mindless. You know, even though it's a system, you still got to think. It is chess at the end of the day. Do not go bishop b5 and just lose a pawn. When they go queen c7, they're aiming at f4. So go d3. And so this line is about what to do if you can't go bishop b5. If you can't go bishop b5 and you don't want to go crazy with g4 like in the last line, you can always do this. You can always play d3 and then you can always play g3. So if you're not getting your bishop to b5 and you don't want to play the freak attack, then put your pawn on d3, put your pawn on g3, super sturdy pawn structure, and then you just fianchetto your bishop, get castled, and it's basically going to be a slower approach where you're still going to go queen e1, probably you're going to go knight d1, maybe you're going to go c3, maybe you're going to go b3, bishop b2, queen e1. I would also aim at h3, g4, so like a delayed freak attack. You are just slower in your approach to attacking. The only thing I'd be careful about with queen e1 is like, if they, oh, how could I forget to say this? If they put a knight, so let's say, okay, I'm just going to waste a move. Let's say we waste a move and you could go e5, but let's say you go here. They go knight d4. Never take this knight. Never give them these good doubled pawns, because then the c pawn is going to be very, very weak. And these are actually very good doubled pawns. So doubled d pawn's good, doubled c pawn's bad. I don't know how. I forgot to say that. But it is a fact. So like if they were to go knight d4, I would just go like queen f2. Knight g4, okay, it's kind of wasted a move. But even here, you'd be fine. But do not take the knight. Like, do anything but take the knight. And odds are they're going to take this knight, and then you're going to take with the queen. So just fun fact that you should know. And then let's say none of that happens. Yeah, just slower approach. b3, bishop b2, queen e1. I kind of want you guys to figure out how you want to play these positions. Do review your games afterwards. Comment what's going wrong, if anything's going wrong, after you roast me for stuttering, that is. And you're going to improve over time. I remember when I started this, it took maybe like a month or two to start performing very solidly in it. So over time, you will improve. I think this was a longer video, so I apologize, but I think we got a lot done in here. We covered e6. Next, we're either going to cover g6, d6, or a6. Probably d6 because it's the biggest deviation and has the littlest probability of transposing. So I hope you enjoyed. Have a great day. Thank you for watching.